Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Playing in the Sandbox podcast, where we are deeply committed to inspiring action in today's leaders. I want you to kick off your shoes and get ready to dig your toes into a great topic today on why your communication failed again. We're going to go over the reasons why it might have failed again, and we're going to take a look in the mirror as to what we can make a change and do differently the next time so that we can make it better for everyone with our communication. So kick off your shoes, dig your toes in, grab your pen and paper, head on into the sandbox, because we're going to get started with why your communication failed again. And hey, don't forget to head on over to tammyjbond.com/podcast and click on this episode, Why Your Communication Failed Again, to download your copy of today's action plan, because I've got more tips, tools, and strategies there to help you build effective communication plan with you, your team, and how you can help others build an effective communication plan as well. So head on over there, tammyjbond.com/podcast, and click on today's episode to get your copy of the action plan. So let's get going. Let's get into the sandbox. You know, one of the questions that I get rather frequently, actually, is, Tammy, help. How do I fix my communication? My favorite, actually, this is really more of the question is, how do I make people understand what I'm telling them? Because my communication seems to keep failing. And I know I'm saying everything right and I'm saying what I need. And what's funny to me in that is right? I'm saying, and it's really about them. So we've made it about the other people in the room, the other team members or the other person on the team. And instead of looking at, well, what can I do to improve, to make it better so that we don't have these stumbling blocks, so that we don't have these fail points that come upon us. And the reality, friend, is this: we teach people how to treat us. We teach people how to treat us. And that goes in line with, we teach people how to communicate with us, how to receive our communication, how to take action, or what's important to take action on. We teach that with every one of our interactions. So if communication is failing in your perspective or from your perspective with others on the team, and they're just not performing at the level that you feel that they ought to be or need them to be, because it's something about communication, then you got to look in the mirror and you got to look at yourself and say, well, what is it that I might be doing? Because teams fail with communication when we're not open, right? When we don't have open dialogue, when we don't have the safety net, if you will, a trust built up where people can ask follow-up questions and feel that they can actually maybe even push back on something that you as the leader or the manager has actually said, right? And then we get into our own interpretations of what is said. And that's one of the big fail points as well. But I'm going to go over some reasons here that are going to, really, there's 6 of them that are really keen for helping you to identify for yourself, what could you do different so that you improve your communication, and how do you apply it with your team members so that they not only improve their communication, they improve the outcome and the action planning on the other side, right? The things that they're producing for you are improved because the communication has improved. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is this: lack of clarity. The number one reason why your communication probably failed is because it's lack of clarity. Lack of clarity from you, like you're clear with what you want. You have the picture in your mind and you think the words that you're saying are matching your picture, but the receiver on the other end of it isn't clear. And that's one of the most common misunderstandings with communication is lack of clarity, because we have a lack of unclear instructions. We have unclear expectations, and that leads to those misunderstandings. It leads to the mistakes, and it leads to the things that become the fail points for people trying to achieve what you have set out for them to achieve. And I would offer this. I would say that for you to change that lack of clarity, it's really important for you to follow up with questions to your team when you've given an instruction, when you've set an expectation. It starts something like, what did you hear me say? What do you understand your expectations are? What do you understand the outcome is that we're looking for? By when do we want this accomplished? What do you hear that the goal is? Asking those questions, you're going to hear back, right, from your team members, what their interpretation of what you communicated to them is, and you're going to be able to match it and say, yes, that's it. Yes, that's it. No, that's not. Let me re-clarify to you so that we're all clear. That 5 minute, 2 minute, 90-second conversation, asking those questions back and forth, is going to bring clarity. You can follow it up or wrap it up with this: what more do you need from me to be clear on what is expected or where we're moving to? So lack of clarity is an issue of really a misunderstanding, right? Or a lack of communication from the perspective, lack of instructions, right? Unclear instructions and unclear expectations. And this is where we want to make sure we have our by when inserted, right? When you give an instruction, you give a task to somebody, you want to make sure you give the by when that it's due. Yesterday I was just talking with a manager who's frustrated with actually having the team that she leads have outputs that meet the timelines that she has, because she's got a timeline of when things need to be done. And then she's frustrated when she's giving instructions to people, and then she's having to follow up because they're late in getting it done. But then when I asked her, well, have you given them by when's? She said, no, I just told him I needed it as soon as possible. Well, one person's as soon as possible is not your as soon as possible. And that's lack of clarity. So get clear with the by when and give that when you give instructions. It will open up the conversation or open up the mind of the receiver to see, okay, now I got to put this in my project timeline so I make sure I meet that due date, that timeline, that deadline, right? Clarity is key. Number 2, poor listening skills. Now, this is a tricky one for when it comes to why communication fails. We can say, well, wait a minute, we're communicating. What does listening have to do with it? Listening has everything to do with it. Friend, if I had my way, every onboarding class for new employees would actually have an active listening course in it. And we would model active listening in every work environment. That is so key. We want to make sure we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to actively listen means that I am not distracted by anything around me, even on the screen. I don't have multiple screens up that I'm looking at. I'm looking at you. I'm making notes. I'm filtering through your information so that I can listen and receive what you have to say. But here's one of the things that's probably the biggest, I will say, hitch in your giddy up when it comes to poor listening skills across your team. We haven't actually defined what good listening skills are. So I can teach active listening, I can model active listening, but if I haven't had the conversation on the other side of the table with the other team members about what good listening looks like to them, how they know they've been listened to, right? What are the key markers that help them to know, oh, this person is paying attention to me. They're actually listening to me, right? We don't ask those questions, but we also don't define what good listening is. And so then what happens? We're in a conversation. People are getting frustrated because they feel like folks aren't listening to them. But really they're reading into the body language and it's causing resentment. And the person might be totally listening and completely in tune, but they're processing through what they're hearing and they're creating their own action timeline of what they want to do to support what they're hearing. But yet we haven't talked about what good listening skills are and how we know we've got it when we've got it and how we can be respectful with our listening. That's part of those ground rules that I would add to the ground rules list of identify and define for the team with each other and hear with each other what good listening is and how you know you've got it when you've got it. Because poor listening skills in a team is one of the reasons communication fails, because people aren't hearing, right? It ties into the said heard as well, right? It ties into what you've said and what I've heard are two different things, because my listening is tuned into something I'm distracted with. Maybe it's something at home. Maybe there was words that were used in the communication that triggered me, caused an offense, caused a hurt feeling, caused something upset. So my listening now is tuned out, right? I'm now frustrated and I don't want to listen to you anymore. That's a poor listening skill. So to become a better listener, let's define for everybody what that looks like and how we know we've got it when we've got it, and how we can model that with each other and for each other and hold each other accountable to that and responsible for the commitment to being good listeners. So, number three, when communication fails, is a big word, and you've heard it before: assumptions. Ha. Do not assume, right? Make no assumptions, right? We know what it means when we hear, don't assume that you know the answer, because you're going to create something, right? You know what the end of that is. You know what you create out of your assumptions. And assumptions can lead to misinterpretations, they can lead to confusion. And assumptions happen often when, oh, I've seen this before, or this is the way we've always done it. So you're giving an instruction, and maybe it's a new framework to a project that you want done. And the listener on the other side is actually making assumptions that you really want it done the old way, because we've always done it that way. So I'm going to assume, and I don't have lack of clarity, and I don't feel empowered to ask the questions because maybe there's a trust issue there. I'm just going to assume that you want me to do it my regular way. They then stopped listening and didn't hear, no, we're changing direction, right? And so assumptions can really get in the way. So when you see people making assumptions, or you yourself as the leader are making the assumption that, all right, I gave the instruction, I told them the by when, and I'm assuming they said they've got it. So my assumption is they've got it and they're going to complete the project for me. And then I'm frustrated because we're 2 weeks past it needing to be done. And, Bobby and Joey haven't completed their tasks yet, and it's holding up the whole project. But they said they had it done, or I thought they did, because they didn't say they didn't have it. They didn't say they didn't understand. They were quiet, or they were just on camera nodding their head. Well, they were nodding their head at whatever was on their screen, because we've all learned in Zoom how to have that Zoom face and that Zoom body language that helps people see I'm engaged, but really I'm staring at something different on my screen, which takes me into reason number 4, which is technology issues, is one of the main reasons why communication fails. We make assumptions, right? We don't ask for clarification on our misinterpretation, or when we're confused. And when we're confused, that, a confused mind doesn't buy. They say that in sales. Well, a confused mind in the world of work doesn't move forward at any swift pace, because they're trying to unblock themselves from being confused, or they're making the assumption that they know how to do it. And the fail point is we didn't ask clarifying questions. So assumptions, you want to resolve that by asking clarifying questions and setting that expectation. Remember, I said we teach people, right, how to treat us, right? You heard me say that. This is key. Ask clarifying questions. You ask it if you're the one giving the delivering the communication, but you want to then equip your people to also ask clarifying questions on the other side. And that's where set the team building side aside and start doing some team bonding around how to build trust, and what does trust mean, so that we can have the safety space to ask the clarifying questions, so that we can let go of assumptions. Whew, that was a lot. Okay. We're going into number 4 with technology issues. These little devices right here, they're great on so many levels, and they can get in our way at work. We put technology to work for us, we believe. That's why we have things like Teams and Slack, and we text back and forth, and we send emails, and we're using technology to be efficient and to be more efficient. And with remote teams, that's so important. But it hinders our communication because we've stopped dialoguing, right? We've stopped actually communicating back and forth. We've gone to texting or sending messages in Slack, and we get in this thread of 47 different messages. And what happens? I've lost track in that great tool, right, of what's mine to own. And even though people keep, tagging me in their communications, I'm not tracking all of the thread, because I've got so many other things going on, or multiple Slack threads, or multiple Teams conversations. And it's not just a matter of time management. We spend so much time organizing the technology instead of picking up the phone as we did in the good old days and have a dang conversation, or get up from your desk and walk down the hallway if you're in the office with others and have a dang conversation. Technology hinders our communication because we rely on it and we get lazy with actually communicating. Yes, I said that. Technology hinders our communication, I feel, more than it advances it in the workplace with teams because it limits our ability. It holds us back from actually having conversation. We rely on the typing and then it leaves it for interpretation and assumption because I'm reading the words. I am interpreting the words through my lens, through my framework. If I have any triggers to your words or I have any experience with you that tells me that what you're saying isn't accurate or I'm questioning it because it doesn't match the picture that I have in my mind or it's created a picture for me that doesn't match the workflow that I see we're supposed to do. So I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to move on and I'm going to say, oh, I didn't get that email. You know how easy that is? It gets in the way. So we have an opportunity to dialogue back and forth, creating those trust bonds with people so that we can ask the clarifying questions instead of relying on the devices to do it for us. All right. To effectively communicate using technology, it's fine to send. Obviously, we send emails all the time. Put your by when in there. Put in there that I want you to ask me a follow up question if you have it. Then it's my responsibility if I'm going to leave it to putting it in a Slack channel or putting it in an email communication. If I'm going to leave it there, then I have a responsibility to actually follow up. I have a responsibility to actually follow up so that I make sure, hey, Joey, I sent you that email yesterday and I see you didn't respond. Totally get that you're busy. Help me with, do you understand? Do you have any questions? What support can I give you so that we make sure we hit our timeline? Joey's going to have a dialogue with you back and forth. Instead of sending him another dang email that he's got to go through the 352 that came in this morning to get to before he gets to yours, again, pick up the phone. And I know that's where so many of you are going to say, well, Tammy, that's why Slack is so great because it pings them on their computer. One of the biggest time sucks in the world, my humble opinion, is when people have distractions with the little tones and the bells that go off when they have a new email or they have a new Slack message. That takes you, it completely is distracting you, right? And it's taking you off track. So you then are supposed to communicate back to whatever message just came through when you've got a completely different project or a completely different conversation going on in your mind because of the workflow that just got interrupted by you pinging them, right? Where if it's a conversation, you can say, hey, Joey, do you have 2 minutes to just chat really quickly? Can you set aside what you're doing and chat with me real quick? I promise it'll be 2 minutes. Yes, I can. Okay, good. Let's have the conversation. I'm going to follow up with you about the email that I sent so that I know, right? So that I know you understand what is expected. When communication fails, it's these simple things that get in our way. And then it's the lack of feedback. Lack of feedback goes like this. Lack of feedback is the result, like, how do I say this the best way? Why is lack of feedback an issue when communication fails? It's because we haven't been giving feedback to know when we're succeeding. We're not giving enough feedback to know when things are working well. And we're not giving enough feedback to say, hey, we need to course correct quickly on this 1, 2, or 3 things. We're just assuming that people know or they can see or they're going to ask, but we're not providing that feedback. Both sides of it. Failing to provide or to even be able to receive feedback, because I want to train people to give me feedback, right? We teach people, right? We teach people how to treat us. So I'm going to teach them that feedback is important to me and that this is what that looks like. Yes, no, renegotiate. Okay. If I give you an instruction, I give you a task to do, I want your yes to be yes. Or if you're going to say no to me, I can't get that done by Thursday, then it's a no with a renegotiation, but I can get it done for you by Friday afternoon. Will that be sufficient? Now I get to go back to Joey and say, hey, Joey, I love that you're renegotiating with me. Thank you for that. Here's the feedback I have because I got to close this up. And I'm going to celebrate that he actually renegotiated with me, but I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I really need it done by Thursday. And here's why. Let me help you figure out what needs to move off your plate so that you can get this one item done by, or no, Friday afternoon is just fine. We that'll be perfect, but it cannot go over Friday afternoon. And I'm communicating that back and forth. That's giving that feedback loop. That's creating that feedback loop, which, speaking of feedback loop, friend, head on over to tammyjvon.com/podcast and click on and listen to Start, Stop, and Continue again. Listen to that again, because in the lack of feedback that causes a breakdown in communication, you're learning the Start, Stop, and Continue method that is a feedback loop to help support your communication. It's a great tool. So go grab that and listen to it again. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it twice. So when it comes to feedback, when it comes to lack of or poor follow up, those are two critical ones right at the end to round this out, to say, that's on you, but it's also teaching others to give it to us, right? I need your feedback. If something's not working, like, you can go into a meeting, and I've seen it happen before, and you can give assignments. I've done this where we give assignments, and then we're making that drastic assumption that everything's moving fine because no one has told me otherwise. Well, the feedback is, the moment things start to derail, or the moment we see that we might get off our timeline, the feedback and communication is the other party needs to come and say, hey, here's what's happening. I don't think we're going to meet our timeline. And then we can problem solve it together. But you're looking at a communication failure because someone didn't come to you and provide that feedback, but you never invited them to give you that feedback. And my yes, no, renegotiate, and my by whens, those are two critical elements to effective communication. I'm going to give you an assignment and by when I want it. And then I'm going to tell you in that moment, if you can't meet that timeline that we've agreed to, that you said you can, and I'm saying I need it, and you're in agreement, you can get it. That's awesome. Your responsibility, friend, is to go back to, or come back to me and say, hey, Tam, I can't meet that. Here's what's come up. That's your responsibility. And I'm equipping you with that to know that, so that we don't have a communication fail. And I'm wondering, wait, you agreed to this and you didn't get it done. And the communication fail is that you didn't update me with critical information that I needed, and you didn't give me that feedback when I needed it. And so that also then insert follow up, right? You're going to check in, especially for critical needs situations. Most people will say to me, Tammy, you want me to check in a lot? Yes, I do. And then they say, I hear this often, what, isn't that like micromanaging? No, I don't see it as micromanaging. I actually see it as supporting your team. I'm checking in with Joey because I know he's got a big deadline. How's it going? What support do you need from me to be successful? Now, if Joey's going to continue to tell me, nope, I got it, boss, I got it, everything's good, no problem, and then still miss the deadline, then that's a different conversation that I get to go back. That's a failed point in communication, right? On Joey's part, communication is 50-50. It goes both ways. I'm 50% responsible for what I say, and I am 50% responsible for how Joey receives it. I know. I'm 50% responsible for what I say, and I'm 50% responsible for how he receives it. And my obligation is to check in with him and to follow up with him so that he's got the freedom to communicate back with me. Okay, that was a lot. And listen, weekly follow-ups, daily check-ins, that's not micromanagement. When it becomes micromanagement, it's when you continue to tell them what to do and how to do it, and you're pushing on them from that angle, right? To get it done your way. We want to equip people and empower people to do the work before them their way, the right way, but their way, not squelching on their own personal creativity. And when communication fails for you, yes, friend, I want you to go back and look in the mirror and say, what can I grow in? Am I being clear, right? Am I causing a lack of clarity because I'm not giving the clarity of instructions up front, and I'm not letting them know the by wins, and I'm not helping to alleviate anything that could potentially be a misunderstanding? Am I modeling poor listening skills? Am I allowing poor listening skills? Am I allowing poor listening skills from some people, but then irritated with others, which then has a bigger ripple effect with the team? What's my responsibility in that? Am I making assumptions, and am I allowing the assumptions of others to get in the way without bringing clarification to get them to stop, right? Building trust with people so that we can better to communicate and ask more powerful questions of each other that alleviate or that redirects potentially if there's any misinterpretation. It gets us back on track quickly because I'm able to ask the questions, the clarifying questions, to move around or move through the assumption, right? Set the assumption aside and get to the point, which is the clarifying question. Am I allowing technology to be in my way or be in their way? Am I allowing bad behaviors? Hey, you're going to have Zoom meetings. I expect everybody on camera. I do. Because if we were all in the office together, we'd all be sitting around the boardroom table together and nobody's hiding behind a veil or a screen. So make that one change. Set that expectation for everybody, because I guarantee it. If you've got two people on the team, that I was on a team, I was working with a team, and the same two people, same repeat offenders, weren't on camera. And the others always showed up on camera, ready to go, right? Ready to have dialogue. But the two were consistently not on camera. And it was allowed by the leader. And when I asked the question, why are we allowing this? Oh, well, they're just always, that's just them. Well, but you have the expectation of to be on camera, right? Yeah, I do. But that's just them. No, but why are we allowing that? Why are we just allowing that, right? So technology, you got to put boundaries around technology and rules around technology so that it works for you, because that spreads a different type of communication when not everybody's playing in the same way. Lack of feedback and lack of or poor follow-up are also the last two items that are causes for your communication failure. Consistent communication failure lands in one of these six things. It just does. And it often starts with, again, going back to the beginning, you teach people how to treat you. So what are you teaching people? What expectations are you setting? And, are you one that I worked with one leader who would just like pout? It's the best way to say it. Literally, you could see it on camera or in a room, wherever the meeting was happening, and he would pout when he didn't feel like he was getting his way. And it was so obvious. And yet, when you go to ask, what are you thinking, what's going on, they don't want to talk. Well, what are they modeling to their team? They're leading the team. I'm the coach I'm coming in to help the team. And he didn't want to have a conversation about whatever was bugging him. And everybody knew with his body language. And then they had all these water cooler conversations about his body language. So he's wondering why his communication was failing. Well, let's check your body language. Let's check your body language, friend. How about that? Maybe I should add that. Your body language is part of why communication fails. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I know that it has for some of you. And I am passionate about helping people to have effective communication in their teams. And I'm passionate about helping you find new tools to be able to do that. So take time today to reflect and get that after action plan at tammyjbond.com/podcast. Click on today's episode, because there's more tools there for you to use that you can help. You can listen to this episode with your team. Have your team help you identify what are the areas that where your communication is failing. What are the areas that might be causing that? What are the things that might be causing that? And you can give feedback to your team on what also might be causing that. We're not pointing fingers to blame. We're bringing people together to engage in a robust conversation around what's happening. And if not this, then what do we want? And we co-create that outcome and that plan together so that we win with our communication every time. Thank you for coming into the sandbox today. My hope is that you are leaving with new tools, tips, and strategies to navigate your personal leadership, your team leadership, and your next bold conversation. And hey, it would mean so much to me if you would share this episode with a friend or a colleague. Share it in your next team meeting so that everyone can benefit from the conversation that we had in the sandbox today. And third-party affirmations, they go a long way in today's world economy. And I would be honored if you shared the value that you gained from spending time in the sandbox today. Head on over to LinkedIn, leave me a comment, leave a comment on YouTube, and wherever you listen to the content here. I'd love to hear how you benefited by talking all about your communication fail points and what you're going to do to correct them. And don't forget to head to tammyjbond.com/podcast to let our team know that you want a copy of today's action plan. It's really simple. Click on today's episode, and right there, a box is going to pop up so that you can download your copy of today's action plan and get more resources and tools in your hand to better equip you to effectively communicate with your team and with those that you work most closely with. And remember, friend, leadership is not something that you're born with. It's something that you grow into. So thank you for taking the time to grow into your next level of leadership in the sandbox today. Make it a great day.